Guys, yes. Yes, I have finally watched X. Not me, but by the time this video is posted, I will have seen it because I'm going to see it after I film this video and I'm so fucking excited. I was in Poland and they didn't release it there, so I had to wait for a couple of weeks to see it like an animal, but now I'll finally be going to see it and I don't care how late it is, I am gonna post a dedicated review because this has been one of my most anticipated movies. Watch me just hate it. So I'm not gonna talk about X today, but that is coming. No, today we are gonna talk about all of the movies that I watched in the month of March. First up, we have No Exit, a brand new Hulu release. Stranded at an isolated highway rest stop in the mountains during a blizzard, a college student discovers a kidnapped child hidden in a car belonging to one of the people inside the building, which sets her on a terrifying life or death struggle to discover who among them is the kidnapper. I gave this one a heart. I give it 3.5 stars. I thought it was pretty good. Not great, but definitely worth watching at least one time. Loved the wintry atmosphere, loved the concept. I have never seen anything like that before. And all the rest of the movies that I'm going to talk about as well, this one included, I feel like just proves that a lot of original horror is alive and well. I feel like a lot of people complain that all we get is like sequels and reboots and remakes and all that kind of stuff, but if you're looking for it, there is a lot of really good original content. It's just hard because a lot of us probably have a lot of different streaming services, so the market is a little bit oversaturated, but it's there. The good stuff is there. I don't have too much to say about No Exit though. This is kind of like a rare instance in which I don't have that many thoughts. Normally I have too many. That's why I started my YouTube channel. I have opinions and the world needs to know about them. But not really for this one. Like, there were good twists. Some of them were a little bit, like, too much. The guy from the Allstate commercials was there. And, that's pretty much it. It was good. It was good. You should watch it. Up next, now, speaking of an oversaturated market, that also means that there will be some stinkers, some stinky boys up in the mix. So up next, I watched The Scary of 61st. This is now streaming on Shudder. It came out in 2021. Two roommates' lives are upended after finding out that their new Manhattan apartment harbors a dark secret. Douche. Another one bites the dust. Yeah, I gave this one a 1/2 star, and in my Letterboxd review, I said another Shudder original bites the dust. Sometimes Shudder releases these originals that just blow me away, and I'm like, wow, cinema. However, there is not much middle ground. It's either like, wow, blows me away, this independent work, it's so unique, oh, mwah, 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 or it's horrible. Like, I gave this movie a 1/2 star. I couldn't finish it. I don't know what else to say. The weird thing is the ratings for this one are all across the board. Like, it's rated at a 2.6 overall, like on average. But if you look at all the ratings, there's not much of a peak. Like, I guess the peak would be at around 3 stars, but it's really all over the map. Like, you had almost 500 people rated at a 1/2 star, but then you had 304 people rated at 5 stars. I don't understand. So do with that what you will. Up next, I rewatched The Slumber Party Massacre from 1982. Yeah, I only give it 2.5 stars, and I was just watching it to cover it as part of my original versus remake era, but I love that movie. I don't know, like, there's very few movies that I rate really low that I absolutely love, and that is one of them. But up next we have The Feast from 2021. I think I also watched this one on Hulu. A wealthy family hosts a sumptuous dinner only for a mysterious young server to chillingly unravel their lives with terrifying consequences they could never see coming. This one confused me, as made evident by my Letterboxd review, in which I just said, and I only gave it 1 star. It was just not coherent at all to me. Like, I get the idea. Eat the rich, and in this movie it was taken somewhat literally, which is like fun, except that the movie was so boring. Like, save for a few really disgusting moments that had me just wanting to like but other than that, I was like, what is going on? Like, I don't care. I was just like really distracted by the fact that it was the same house from You Should Have Left with Kevin Bacon and Amanda Seyfried, because it's a Welsh movie and You Should Have Left was also filmed in Wales. It's the same house. So I was distracted by that, and then also I was just really bored. Like, nothing was going on. I didn't care about any of the characters, least of which our main character, who has like pretty much no dialogue at all. It's really similar to Fresh, except that it's boring. So anyways, moving on. next up I watched Slumber Party Massacre from 2021, the remake. I've obviously already covered this in depth in my original versus remake video. I love this movie, adore it to death. Quite simply, a made-for-TV movie has no business being this good. And a good little chunk of you agreed, thank you. If you haven't seen it, in my opinion, it's a remake done right. It's a parody on feminist films, but like also does have a good feminist message. It like mixes the two things really well, like it pokes fun at feminism while also being very empowering. Also swaps the gender roles. It's a lot of fun, like they objectify the men, but in a really funny way, and like the male actors are definitely in on the joke. It's all in good fun. I highly recommend it. Up next would be Fresh, I think one of the horror movies most talked about in this last month. Frustrated by scrolling dating apps only to end up on lame, tedious dates, Noah takes a chance by giving her number to the awkwardly charming Steve after a produce section meet cute at the grocery store. I was so close. I was almost freaking done with the synopsis. After a produce section meet cute at the grocery store. I can't lie, I ate this shit up. Sebastian Stan, he is so like, you know what I mean? He has such a good performance in this movie. Honestly, like everybody does. It's not perfect. I give it 4 stars. Like it does suffer from some kind of lame stereotypical stuff, and at some points it's a little bit predictable. But other than that, I have never seen a take on this kind of subject matter be so fun, because I generally do not like this kind of subject matter, and I don't want to spoil it. Like if you haven't seen a trailer or you don't really know what it's about, go in blind. I promise you. I promise you so hard. And I talked about this on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter if you'd like to. But a lot of people complained like, oh, it should have been a lot more gory and a lot more disturbing. They didn't really push the limits with this one. Like, do they have to? You could say that about literally any horror movie. Oh, it wasn't disturbing enough. Oh, it could have been gorier. Sure, okay. And some of us don't handle that well, and we appreciate it when it's toned down a little bit and treated more as a comedic thing. So I had a blast with Fresh. It's absolutely one that I'll rewatch at some point. I even said on Letterboxd, was it everything we deserved? Yes. I don't know about all that. Like, well, okay, no, maybe I'll say that it did not exceed my expectations. No, but it did though. But it wasn't like fantastic. It was not perfect. It was not 4.5 to 5 stars. You know what I mean? Like it has some issues, but it's so much fucking fun. Up next would be an Oscar nominated movie. I think it was nominated for Best Picture actually. That would be Licorice Pizza, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. Set in the San Fernando Valley in the 1970s, this film follows a high school student who is also a successful child actor. What they left out of the synopsis on Letterboxd is that he then goes on to have this really weird romantic friendship with a woman who is almost 10 years older than him. No, I think she actually is 10 years older than him. I think in the movie she's 25 and he is 15 when they meet and they like go on their first date kind of thing. Their first date is like totally platonic, but they go out to dinner and then they become really close friends, and throughout the movie, like the movie is just not critical enough of itself and of the relationship. Like, I get that the theme is kind of like forbidden romance, forbidden crushes. It's kind of like how a lot of people go to work and then they just have sexual tension with almost everybody that they work with. It's just a thing. It just happens. We all have forbidden crushes. I get it. But when it comes to a 15-year-old and a 25-year-old, like, what the fuck are we doing? I think that just makes it so painfully obvious that the roots of are down so deep in Hollywood, to the point where so many people who have worked in like Nickelodeon studios or in Disney, some of them are literally like convicted offenders and they got hired even after the fact. There are a couple of channels that talk about this kind of stuff. I'll like plop them up on the screen, but it's no joke. Like the roots of pedophilia are so normalized in Hollywood to the point where this kind of a movie was like not even really that heavily scrutinized. I have seen a lot of articles about it, but then when you see when Paul Thomas Anderson is interviewed about it, he really just brushes it off. Not to mention that now I think that the actors are 19 and 30, which means that while they were filming, they were likely either 17/18 and like 28/29. That's still really weird. I don't think that that should be a hot take, and I also don't feel like it should be excused because it's a period piece that takes place in the 70s. Like, who cares? If the gender roles were reversed and it was a 25-year-old man and a 15-year-old girl, then I think that more people would be a little bit more riled up. But unfortunately, that's just, you know, not the way that it is. Also, I only give it 2 stars. It's a Once Upon a Time in Hollywood wannabe, and that's that on that. Also, my Letterboxd review was funny. This is literally nominated for Best Picture. Well, it's not good, so I don't know what you want me to do about it. And scene. Anyways, what's up next? Oh, we have Hellbender, yes. Growing up is hell. A teen and her mom live simply in a home in the woods, spending their time making metal music. A chance encounter with a fellow teen causes her to uncover a connection between her family and witchcraft, which causes a rift with her mother. This movie is so fucking good. Like, I know that I only rated it at 3.5 stars, but it's so, I love it. I had no idea what to watch one night. I just knew that I wanted to watch a female-led film, you know, like I was celebrating Women's Month, and if it was going to be directed by a woman, that was going to be a bonus. This one is co-directed by a woman, and it was also the first recent release that popped up on my Shudder homepage. I was like, what are the odds? And it's also about witches, and it's indie, ooh! And it turned out to be one of the best fucking things that I saw the entire month. The metal music in the movie is amazing. This mother-daughter duo is called Hellbender, and that's also the title of the movie. It's so cool. They wear really cool makeup. The way that the witchcraft is done in the movie is so unique. I loved it. The way that these women just get intoxicated by nature and by life, you just have to watch it. You have to see what I'm talking about. This is also just such a prime example that if you have a low budget, but you know how to frame a shot, you're gonna be just fine. So if you have Shudder or wherever you can watch this movie, I highly recommend Hellbender. Not gonna be for everybody though. I don't know how many people enjoy like folk, low budget, indie witch movies, but the vibes are immaculate. They really are. Up next would be Cherry Falls from 2000. I think that this one was released to Shudder this month. Cherry Falls is a quiet little town until the night that a serial killer begins preying on its youth. After a third teen is found dead, the town realizes the victims were all virgins. Bum bum bum! I was a little bit disappointed by this one, I'm not gonna lie. It only got 2 stars from me, and I think it's a really well-intentioned movie. Thematically, it's kind of about rape culture, but it's done just a little bit sloppily to the point where I'm like, what is this movie actually saying? It has a nice little twist on the slasher trope where the people who have sex are always the ones to be killed first. But also, this movie cost $14 million to make, and it looks like dog shit. For $14 million, like, granted, they had some bigger actors in it. Brittany Murphy, love that. But then you look at the practical effects, and they're terrible. The cinematography is terrible. The lighting, like, everything, it just looks bad. So where did all of that go? I just feel like it's reasonable that I would expect a little bit more from that movie. I'm just really bummed because generally I really like low budget, early 2000s, cheesy kind of stuff like that. So I should have loved this movie. It kind of had all the right ingredients, but it just didn't do it for me. I didn't really have much fun with it. I just was a little bit disappointed. Up next, we have a little movie called Signs that was released in 2002. A family living on a farm finds mysterious crop circles in their fields, which suggests something more frightening to come. So my subs are aware that my grandfather passed a couple weeks ago, and this was one of his favorite movies of all time. It's probably my favorite movie that he ever showed me. Although if you look at the list that I made on Letterboxd of Grandpa Jim's favorites, there are a lot of my favorites on here. So it's hard to say, but Signs is just the one that I felt like I needed to watch the day that he passed. And it was everything that I needed. It was just as good as I remembered from the last time that I watched it with him a couple of years ago. And if you haven't seen it, you definitely should. It's one of my favorite alien movies of all time. And one of the only M. Night Shyamalan movies that I like, so there's that. Up next was Come True, which is a 2020 horror movie. Looking for an escape from her recurring nightmares, 18-year-old Sarah submits to a university sleep study, but soon realizes she's become the conduit to a frightening new discovery. I did not like this movie. I was really invested with like the first half, or like the first 2 acts roughly, and then the third act just beefed it hard. It's hard to explain. On Letterboxd, I said this left so much to be desired, but was also somehow doing too much at the same time. That's accurate. I feel like the final kind of twist reveal was just so underwhelming, but then also during the reveal, the plot kind of went batshit and like just completely subverted expectations, was a total tone shift, and like I just could not really get my footing with the last third of this movie. And then with like the final reveal and all of that, I was like, that That's it? I don't really want to spoil anything, but the movie leads you into thinking that one thing is true, and then the actual reveal is just like, there's such a disconnect. I don't know. I didn't like it. I gave it 2.5 stars. It's not for me. Up next would be Arachnophobia, a rewatch from 1990. A large spider from the jungles of South America is accidentally transported in a crate with a dead body to America, where it mates with a local spider. Soon after, the residents of a small California town disappear as the result of spider bites from the deadly spider offspring. This movie is so much fun. I don't want to say too much right now because it is going to be part of my video where I talk about all the horror movies that I loved as a kid and if they still hold up, yada yada. So I don't want to say too much, okay? I don't want to, just that you should watch this movie. And also, it's no wonder to me why I loved it so much as a kid, because it's produced by Steven Spielberg, and it definitely feels like it was produced by Steven Spielberg. Has almost kind of like a Gremlins sort of a vibe, has kind of a self-aware vibe. It's definitely a dark comedy. I loved it. But I've already said too much, so moving on. Up next would be another recent release, Death on the Nile. A Belgian sleuth's vacation aboard a glamorous river steamer turns into a terrifying search for a murderer when a picture-perfect couple's idyllic honeymoon is tragically cut short. This movie is not good. I know that I gave it 3 stars, but it is not a good movie. I just wanted to up the average score a little bit for my girl Emma. Emma Mackey is such a talented actress. Like, it must be so embarrassing to be Gal Gadot and Armie Hammer, which, by the way, oof. Like, imagine filming this movie, like, 2 years ago or whatever, and then everything that happens with Gal Gadot and Armie Hammer, and it's, oh, how embarrassing. But anyways, Emma Mackey, she is in the show called Sex Education. This is the best show of all time, if you haven't heard of it. But Emma Mackey is so talented, and it must have been so embarrassing to be Gal Gadot and Armie Hammer and just have this girl who is more new to film just act circles around you. So I gave it 3 stars for the girl Emma Mackey, and also because I was entertained. The movie is too long. It looks terrible. I don't understand like the shooting style of it. It looks so weird and shiny, and it's just like uncomfortable to look at. It's a little bit like Scream 4. Like, what was going on with the lighting there? I don't know. But I was entertained. I was able to sit through the whole thing, and like, I enjoyed myself. It was fine. You can make it through the movie. But also, Emma Mackey is incredible. So I gave it 3 stars. It probably deserves like 1.5 or 2, but I'm devoted, okay? And she deserves better than that. Up next, I rewatched Never Hike Alone, which is my favorite movie in the entire Friday the 13th franchise, even though it's a fan film and it's not technically part of the franchise. A hiker's survival skills are put to the test when he stumbles upon the remains of an old abandoned camp and discovers its long, dark secrets. It's so good, and right now they are currently funding for Never Hike Alone 2. I actually went on the Womp Stomp Films channel and I did a live stream with Vinny DeSanti, the director. Great guy, amazing writer, amazing director, absolutely support them. They've already reached like 2/3 of their goal, so definitely go help them out. Their crowdfunding link will be down below. After this point in time, I watched barely any horror movies this month. For example, the next 2 movies I watched were Little Miss Sunshine and The Hustle. They were both movies that I watched on the plane to Poland. They usually just don't really have many horror movies in their like movie selection. However, they did have Ready or Not, which, you know, is like my favorite horror movie of all time. So kudos to United Lufthansa. Little Miss Sunshine is okay. I didn't think it was as special as everyone likes to make it seem. Like, it has an amazing cast, but the main message of the movie is, I'm just not like the other girls. I'm so quirky and weird. Which I think was well-intentioned because it's trying to dismantle the systems that put these really creepy, predatory things in place. Like these beauty pageants for toddlers. Who thought that was a good idea? Whatever. Anyways, yeah, 3.5 stars. It's good. I'm never gonna watch it again. The Hustle was so terrible. I honestly should have given it a 1/2 star, but I gave it 1.5 stars. And the only reason is because the looks that they had Anne Hathaway and Rebel Wilson in were fantastic. These women looked so good, but every single thing else about this movie was so terrible. Rebel Wilson apparently plays the same character in every single movie that she's in. Also, apparently Anne Hathaway cannot do any accents, not to save her life. It's also a movie where you think it's gonna be kind of empowering with these 2 hustler women that like team up, and then at the end of the day, they both get swindled by a man. It's horrible. It's a really bad movie. Anyway, up next would be a horror movie called Pontypool from 2008. When disc jockey Grant Mazzy reports to his basement radio station in the Canadian town of Pontypool, he thinks it's just another day at work. But when he hears reports of a virus that turns people into zombies, Mazzy barricades isolates himself in the radio booth and tries to figure out a way to warn his listeners about the virus and its unlikely mode of transmission. This one was 2 stars for me, and I will tell you why, because a lot of people seem to think that this is like some kind of underrated masterpiece. The concept is interesting and it's very unique, but I feel like I must stress that interesting and unique does not equate to good. I couldn't suspend my disbelief with this movie. I thought that the reveal of like how this virus is transmitted was really stupid. It's just not a thing that makes sense. I'm sorry if you like this movie, if you think it's unique and cool, it doesn't make sense. I don't know what to tell you. Also, worth pointing out, there is a young girl who is just in full blackface in this movie, and I did not see a single Letterboxd review talking about this. It's some weird like parody moment on Lawrence of Arabia, I guess. I did not understand what was going on. Regardless if it's some kind of self-aware thing, just don't put people in blackface, right? I feel like I'm losing my mind. Also, we must stop the mediocre men agenda. There is a ridiculously weird and out of place romance in this movie that just makes no type of sense to me at all. And the person that I always bring up as being the most guilty of this is Adam Sandler, his production company. They're always pairing these gorgeous women with these nothing men. I'm just tired of seeing women who are written by men who fall in love with really mediocre or below average men. I've had enough. It takes me out of the movie every time I see something like that. Anyways, Turning Red would be up next, which is actually a good movie, the most recent Pixar release. 13-year-old May is experiencing the awkwardness of being a teenager with a twist. When she gets too excited, she transforms into a giant red panda. The people who animated this movie just seem like they were having the time of their lives. And also for them being preteens in the early 2000s, it just kind of spoke to my soul. Like, yes, I was born in 1999, but a lot of the technology and stuff that these girls were using, I also used as a preteen. So I give it 4 stars. I thought it was fantastic and so extremely relatable. We also love to see Asian women directing these big budget Pixar movies. And shame on you, Disney, for not giving it a wide theatrical release. It was in theaters in Europe, I guess, but it did not have a big theatrical release like it should have. Like, I would have loved to have watched this movie on the big screen with the animation style. Like, it would have been insane. I've just never seen a children's movie be that relatable. Like, yes, she turns into a giant red panda, but it was so grounded. It was just such an accurate representation of what it's like to be a preteen, regardless of like whatever culture you come from, the kind of doodles she makes in her notebooks, her obsession with Four Town, this boy band, all of that stuff. I was like, yes, I feel seen and thank you. Also, people are up in arms about the fact that they discuss periods in this movie. And people are like, children should just not be exposed to this mother carrying a bunch of pads with her into the bathroom. Like, children get periods. That's when you get your first period, when you're a child. I've known people who were even younger, but I was 12 when I got my first one. Is a 12-year-old not a child? Should a 12-year-old not be like prepared and know what's gonna happen to their body? I don't want to fully go there, but I know that it is the patriarchy talking and the fact that they like don't want to destigmatize periods for some reason. Blood comes out of our vaginas once a month. Get over it. Oh my god. And the movie also captures like the embarrassment and the stigma of it as well. I can't say for certain, but like the title Turning Red and the fact that she turns into a big red panda, I kind of feel like it is a bit of an allegory for getting your first period. I could keep going on and on. I won't though, because this is a horror channel and it's not a horror movie. I get it. So let's now move on to The Batman. Yes, I finally saw it. I don't feel like I need to read off the synopsis because this is the most popular movie in the entire world right now. Also, if you're new to my channel, I have talked about this movie quite a bit with my subs during my live streams. I go live almost every single weekend. If you want to join, click subscribe, the notification bell, you won't miss the next one. But yeah, we've talked about it. I gave it 3.5 stars, and honestly, the more that I think about it, the less that I like that movie. It's way too long. I loved the first 2 acts of the movie, but then when the second act was over, I thought that that was the climax. And then I thought that the movie was over. However, then we had the whole 3rd act left to go, which was about another 45 minutes, and at that point, I was done. I was really bored by the 3rd act. I felt like they tried to cram in an entire trilogy into one movie. Didn't appreciate it. But the things that I did appreciate were Robert Pattinson, the cinematography, the lighting. I know that that's a general complaint, but I actually love how dark it was. I thought it was really unique. I also love how grounded it was for a superhero movie. It was so different to a lot of the mainstream stuff that we normally see. She's losing her voice. Okay. And also Robert Pattinson in goth boy makeup. Need I say more? That was rhetorical. No, I don't. So next up would be Christopher Robin from 2018. Christopher Robin, the boy who had countless adventures in the 100-acre woods, has grown up and lost his way. Now it's up to his spirited and lovable stuffed animals, Winnie the Pooh, Tigger, Piglet, and the rest of the gang to rekindle their friendship and remind him of endless days of childlike wonder. I love this movie so much. It is a perfect movie to me, 5 stars, a heart. This might be my favorite movie of all time, but it's hard to say because I haven't rewatched Roman Holiday in a while. I am planning on that soon, but this movie, it's like my grief movie. It was another one of my grandpa's favorite movies as well. I saw this movie twice in theaters, 2 days in a row actually, and then the following year my dog passed away. I watched it again, and then my grandpa recently passed away, so I rewatched it yet again. It's just so comforting and healing. I don't even really know what it is fully about it. Like, yeah, I watched Winnie the Pooh a lot when I was a young child, like 4 to 5, so I don't even really have that much of a connection to Winnie the Pooh, but this movie just means so much to me. And one of my subs, somebody who's really consistent on my live streams and comments on like all my videos, they mentioned that they watched it for the first time and they really liked it. I think that was 123 Rock fan, so shout out to you. Adore that movie, can't say enough good things about it. Up next would be Windfall. This is a brand new movie that was released to Netflix. A man breaks into a tech billionaire's empty vacation home, but things go sideways when the arrogant mogul and his wife arrive for a last-minute getaway. I don't really know what to say about this movie, so I'm just gonna quote my Letterboxd review. On paper, it's a good movie, so it's a real shame that on screen, it's very boring. This movie literally doesn't get really good and interesting until the last minute? The last 30 seconds, maybe? So I don't know if it's really worth watching the entire movie up until that point, because even the movie itself seems to just be aware that it's dragging on until we finally get to the third act. It's just not very good. The acting is really good, I have to say, from everybody involved. The script is just really stale, so it is kind of hard to get through. Just gonna go ahead and move on to High Life, which is a movie that I watched in the spirit of Women's History Month. It is directed by a woman. Monty and his baby daughter are the last survivors of a damned and dangerous mission to the outer reaches of the solar system. They must now rely on each other to survive as they hurtle toward the oblivion of a black hole. So this movie got 1 star from me. There's just a lot of reasons why. I don't want to fully get into it, but I did give the movie a star for Rob. It's for Robert Pattinson only. Really, I didn't like pretty much anything else about this movie, except for the fact that Mia Goth was in it, and we'll talk about her soon enough in my X review, don't worry. But again, this movie just really dragged for me, and I love a good artsy fartsy movie sometimes, like In the Earth, Hellbender, Midsommar, but sometimes I just can't help but feel like the director will make a really weird choice under the guise that like, oh, it's artistic. That's how I feel about Titan. I hated that movie. Like, it just is not for me. Like, I don't understand. To me, it's just like, oh, this movie is just weird. And this was just kind of one of them, and there was a very like sexually violent scene, and I am not ever about that. I think the movie covers the themes of isolation really well and what happens to a group of people when they are discarded by humanity. It's an interesting take, but I felt like the movie was too long. It was boring. I didn't even make it through the entire thing. I made it like an hour in, and then I kind of just skipped around until the ending. I just knew it wasn't for me, and then judging by the ending, that had no type of payoff for me either, so I know that it wasn't even really worth me watching the whole thing. So yeah, kind of a bummer, but Robert Pattinson and Mia Goth, they always do their best, and they're really good in the movie, but I do not recommend it. It is a 1 star for me. Up next would be Everything Everywhere All at Once. This is another brand new 2022 release. An aging Chinese immigrant is swept up in an insane adventure where she alone can save the world by exploring other universes connecting with the lives she could have led. Ultimately, this sweeps her up into an even bigger adventure when she finds herself lost in the infinite worlds of the multiverse. Spider-Man No Way Home could actually never. This movie has me dying to watch more of the Daniels movies. At the top of my list would be Swiss Army Man, which if you haven't heard the synopsis for that movie, definitely look it up. It's insane. It is undoubtedly the craziest shit I've ever seen, and no, I am not exaggerating, and yes, I have seen so many movies in my day, and yet I can confidently say that. It's not perfect. I think the only downfall that it has is that some scenes drag on for a little bit too long, so like there are some pacing issues, but that said, I still gave it 4.5 stars and a heart. It is damn near near perfect to me. But it's also absolutely not going to be for everybody because, as I mentioned, it is absolutely batshit. And I don't want to give anything away, but the horror scream queen herself, Jamie Lee Curtis, is in this movie and she's hilarious. I am so happy that she is getting back into comedy because she's in one of my favorites of all time, Freaky Friday. That woman is hilarious. Like, yes, she is an amazing actress, horror actress, but she belongs in comedy, in my opinion. It was just fantastic. Like, having the lead be a Chinese woman who is over 50, you love to see it. So go see that movie at any cost. I know it's not going to be for everybody, but I still think that everybody should watch it. Last thing I will say, it is probably some of the best editing I've ever seen in my entire life. Editing would have made or broken that movie, and it just mwah. So next movie would be Pig from 2021. A truffle hunter who lives alone in the Oregonian wilderness must return to his past in Portland in search of his beloved foraging pig after she is kidnapped. I know that this movie is rated really highly, and my dad really liked the movie, and I think he thought I was gonna like it too, and I did not. Now I do have a confession, okay? Yes, I was drunk off the complimentary white wine United Airlines gave me, but I wasn't really gripped by this one. I don't know, I just didn't get Pig. All of the chain of events of the story were not that interesting to me, and there was such a disconnect. The places the story went, the settings just were not that interesting or appealing to me. I didn't really understand what the movie was trying to say, and yeah, it's a good performance by Nicolas Cage. I don't agree that he should have been nominated for Best Actor though. I feel like people are kind of reaching with this movie. It's fine, but I only gave it 2.5 stars. I don't know. I don't feel any draw to rewatch it, but I would probably need to give it a proper score, but I'm just gonna leave it at that. I'm sorry. Up next would be Luca from 2021. I don't want to read the synopsis. You've probably heard of this one. It is yet again another big Pixar movie that was sent straight to streaming because Disney hates Pixar for some reason. Although I don't think it's really much of a mystery considering that Pixar prioritizes hiring people that are of a very diverse background and giving them full reign of their stories, whereas Disney is we hate the gays. So I thought this one would be kind of like an underrated gem, and I would be mad that it didn't get a theatrical release, but I wasn't. I gave it 3 stars. It's fine, and I was like, I thought it would be gayer, because it's definitely gay. Those little fish boys are gay, but still not enough. If you're gonna do that, just go for it. And that's all I want to say. It was fine. I will not be watching it again though. Up next would be Bo Burnham's 8th Grade from 2018. 13-year-old Kayla endures the tidal wave of contemporary suburban adolescence as she makes her way through the last week of middle school. I have never seen a movie like this in my life that was so uncomfortably grounded in reality. I said, I feel so seen, I'm gonna be sick. Every event that happened in the movie, I'm like, this is my life. Because yes, I mean, there are so many movies about how, oh, high school sucks, whatever, blah, 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 but they're still heavily romanticized. And then any rom-com, teen comedy, whatever, also romanticizes the hell out of high school. I don't know how many movies have been set in middle school, but this was so painfully realistic. It is pretty much just one of those slice of life kind of movies because it's not a very plot heavy movie, and yet this main character, Kayla, goes through so much growth by the time the movie is over. And it's just such a realistic snapshot of what middle school is like. I'm freaking out. I can't get over it. So I gave it 4.5 stars. I was blown away. I'm like, how does Bo Burnham get inside the head of a 13-year-old girl like that? Because obviously he was 13 once upon a time too, but the main character is a girl, and thank you, Bo Burnham. I guess that's all I have to say. After that would be Get Smart. Not gonna read the synopsis for this one because my Letterboxd review pretty much covers it. Michael Scott becomes a secret agent. That's what it is. I gave it 2 stars. It's not good. It's not funny. I don't really get it. Some parts of it seem to be well-intentioned, it seems to be anti-racial profiling and anti-fat phobic, but then some of the choices in the movie still seem to be a little bit insensitive. I couldn't really figure out what they were going for. Anyways, that movie's old, it doesn't matter. Up next would be Umma, which is a brand new release from 2022. Amanda and her daughter live a quiet life on an American farm, but when the remains of her estranged mother arrive from Korea, Amanda becomes haunted by the fear of turning into her own mother. This movie, it was not good. I gave it 2 stars. Honestly, it's not a bad movie, but it's just not anything that we haven't seen before. I was really disappointed because they also bring in the themes of immigration and stuff like that, so I thought it would be a different take on the kind of subject matter that the movie brings up, but it just wasn't. It's fine, but I think it's one that you can skip. I would just save your money for the next indie horror release that comes out in theaters. And also, Gavin from New Girl was in it. I love that guy.
Okay, I'm just now realizing that his name is actually Gavin in Friends, but in New Girl, I think his name is Russell, so my bad.
But anyways, the last movie that I watched in March would actually be April Fool's Day from 1986. A group of 8 college friends gathered together at an island mansion belonging to heiress Muffy St. John to celebrate their final year of school. They soon discover that each has hidden a secret from their past, which is revealed, and soon after, they turn up dead. Biff! Yes, the guy that plays Biff from Back to the Future is in this movie, and I love that. Also gave this movie 3.5 stars and a heart. I really liked it. Though I do feel it is a wee bit slow. I think that the build-up is a little bit annoying, and also, despite all of the expository dialogue they throw at you, I just don't care about any of the characters. So that made the movie a little bit more boring, a little bit harder to follow, but I will say, the practical effects are amazing. They're a lot of fun. Also, the ending is so worth it. It is so worth the slow build-up, though it might not be as good on a rewatch. I don't really know how drawn I will be to this movie in the coming years, but it could become an annual watch. I actually have it in this double pack with My Bloody Valentine, so obviously this DVD is not going anywhere. But yeah, I don't know. I adored the original My Bloody Valentine. That is absolutely going to be an annual watch. April Fool's Day, maybe it'll be like biannual or something. That said though, I do highly recommend it if you've never seen it before and you're a fan of 80s horror. It's fun, there's twists, it's not your typical slasher. But that's gonna do it for today. I gotta wrap things up because I'm about to go see X. So remember to subscribe, click the notification bell so you don't miss my review for that movie. Also click the like, it lets me know that I should keep doing these monthly wrap-up videos. A big thank you to my patrons. You guys got some bonus content this last month because I did end up talking about the whole Chris Rock Will Smith slap incident over there. That will remain a Patreon exclusive, so if you want to sign up and support me, that'll be linked down below. As will all my social media, my social justice spotlight, all that good stuff. But I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope I catch you in the next one. Bye!